Hey students, welcome back. This week we're going to be starting with a whole new approach to programming in C++. We are going to be writing our first Windows Forms application. Up to this point in the course, we have been writing only console apps. Console apps are simply programs that display in a text window or a console window. They can only display text, and that's the kind of program we've been writing so far. We've learned a lot, but now we want to move into a more exciting and a little more complex kind of programming, Windows Forms application programming. We're going to still use Visual C++ 2010 Express, which you see I have open here, and I actually have the start of a Windows Form app called Visual Hello World. This is actually the first program you're going to make this week in this course. Okay, so let's take a look at this program and just run it for a second to see what a Windows Form is. I'm going to debug it just like I do with all my programs in Visual C++. Hit yes, it'll open the program for me. I'll pull that up here, and we can see that I have a program that looks exactly like the form that I designed here in Visual C++ Express. And this particular program is a very simple program, but it is displayed in a Windows form. So what is a Windows form? Well, it's simply a container that allows you to display information to the user and allow the user to interact with the program in some way. There's lots of ways a person can interact with a program. Clicking a button is probably one of the most common. Filling in a text box, selecting something from a menu, and all of those elements that can be displayed in a program are displayed in a form, and we see I have a sample form here. All forms have some really common elements that are kind of built into them. For example, we have at the top we have a title bar, and it gives you the title of the program or the window that's currently open. The upper right corner you have a close button, a minimize button, maximize button, etc. And these are just common elements of all forms, and they are built into the Windows form. You don't have to create them or program them, they just work. Windows Forms also allow you to resize the window. They sometimes put scroll bars at the top or the bottom or the sides. And again, they have all kinds of elements you can interact with in the program. This is a really simple program. It has simply one element, and that is a button. And I put my mouse over it, and it kind of changes color. Again, that's something that just happens by default with buttons in Windows Forms apps. But when I click this button, you'll see I get a response. Okay, so when I click it, I get a small dialog box that opens, and it gives me a message, hello world. And that also is a kind of form. We see it has a close button in the upper right. It has a built-in button that allows me to click OK, and the little window or form goes away. Okay, so this is a form, our Windows Form application. It's what we're going to be building from here on out in this course. Again, forms are so common. They're a part of Windows operating systems that we take them for granted, and they're in all programs that we use. And so we're going to learn how to make them. All right, so let's take a look. Close this program down, and let's take a look a little bit at what we have here. In our Solution Explorer on the left, we see multiple folders, just like we had in our console app, but these folders all have a bunch of files in them. Now, I didn't create any of these files. These were all created by Visual C++ for me when I created a new Windows Form app. And so we are no longer going to be creating empty projects like we did with console apps. Actually, our projects will be filled with a bunch of files. Now, you really don't edit any of these files except for one, and that is this form1.h. It's a header file. That's why it's in the header files folder. That's what the H stands for, a header file. And it essentially represents this form right here. Okay, and all the code that I will write for this program will usually be contained in this one file, this header file called form1. All right. You can look through these other files, open them up, and take a look at them, but don't ever edit them or change them or delete anything from them, because you will mess up your program and it will no longer work. All right, and we have a number of other things in this program. We have a toolbox. We'll always click on the button here for toolbox to open up a bunch of toolbox items that we can use. We'll also have properties window, which is going to be very important. We'll learn about that in a little while. And then down below, as usual, we have our output window. Now, again, our program is contained, all of our programming code is contained inside this form1.h file that we're going to be programming in. How do we look at that code? We simply come up here and select View, Code, and we see that inside this this header file called Form1, I have all kinds of code. Now again, I didn't write any of this code in this section. Okay, it starts with the pragma once. It has a namespace. We should recognize that word. It has a bunch of namespaces in there, a bunch of things that probably at first glance you don't understand, and that's fine. Don't worry about it. Again, this is all created for you by Visual C++. Down at the bottom of the code that's written for you, you'll see a pragma end region. And that is the end of all the code written for you by Visual C++. And after that is a little section of code that I actually did write. And this is where I program my program, my Visual Hello World program, to respond to the clicking of the button. And we can see in here, go ahead and close this down so you can see all the code. We can see in here, I've got just about 4 lines of code. But we'll see that basically what I have here is a method that controls the clicking of the button. It's a private method, meaning only this form can see it. And it's got a name, button1click. Well, that actually makes a lot of sense because this particular method controls the clicking, or it is run when the button called button1 is clicked. That makes sense because it's when I click that button in the form that I got some kind of response from the program. There's a series of objects and event arguments here. We'll just ignore those for now. But then after that set of parentheses, we have an opening curly brace and down here a closing curly brace. That should look very familiar to you. Just like the main function that we wrote in our console apps, we have here a function or a method, and it begins with an opening curly brace and ends with a closing curly brace. And all of the code that you write will go in between that. So really, I only actually wrote 1 line of code here. And what I wrote was message box, colon, colon, and then the word show, and then in parentheses and in quotes, hello world. Well, that starts to make sense, doesn't it? Basically what's happening here is when I click button 1, okay, a message box opens and shows a message that's contained here in quotes, hello world. Let's go back and run our program one more time just to see. We'll say yes to that. We run our program, debug it, and sure enough, I have a button. This happens to be button 1. We'll show you later how you learn that. And when I click on it, it sure enough opens a message box and it has the message hello world. And so now we see the code that allows me to create this simple program. In a moment we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to actually program this exact program and how to start from the beginning to do that.